We together? Yes, we are together.
So you're welcome on Blackwood Finance, Africa Maria from Kampala, Uganda, with my colleague.
INNOSSETU.
Today is a Friday. I hope you guys are warming up for a very hot weekend. But yeah, so maker, so it is 37 minutes past 8 a.m. here in Kampala, Uganda. It's the 8th of December 2023. People are warming up, preparing for Xmas. They call it the birth of Jesus. But anyway, today's topic is about China imperialism in Africa, say too. Apparently you've seen how China has been so involved in the African affairs to the point that a lot of people think that China wants to control Africa and EU. So we may have other colonial masters, which is of course is China. What do you think about that?
Okay.
Look at Africans searching there. Why you searching there for?
No, what it is. So look at it.
When this?
So um when we look at China, being an Asian country, being a country that is growing to some extent economically. Eh?
Funyo sas.
Yepere.
Hazo kwa yokera. Jagamba nkusaze
Teri
yakali.
agenda gamani aliko.
Anyway, stop. Anyway, China's engagement in Africa is often characterized by economic investment, infrastructure projects, and resource extraction rather than traditional imperialism. We know that China has pursued a partnership with African nations through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, providing loans and investment for, of course, different projects. Of course, you will know that while this approach has led to economic growth at some perspective, like it paints it, because apparently everyone credits China, that it has led to economic growth in some African countries. The concern that has been risen is about the debt dependency and environmental impacts. It is essential to distinguish Chinese involvement from historical Western imperialism as the motivation and methods differ. Uh, China has done everything. Like most of the roads have been constructed by China. China has had a very huge infrastructure impact in the African existence now, and but there is one great thing that we cannot skip, or that we can turn blind eye. That is the debt dependency. Like apparently, China demands almost every African have a debt. Most of the African interest.
Mm.
So that date,
Do you now and punchy news headlines. So China, in both long-established diplomatic partner and the new investor, um, encompass not only resources of trade and so forth. China's Chinese aid practice a poorer say so claims to be an African, but this area is because currently is one of those that fight and but this salary about to this gives the so-called pattern it's doing with Africa is it finds offering African countries. Find very many Chinese are doing trade in Africa. They do doing those countries. When China says it's dealing, it's trade with China uh, to be to be exposed to those countries. That's the and countries which
Mm.
this is the type of I see very industry coming back to in Uganda.
Right.
The,
Mm. Mm.
the fact we have Okay. Yes.
Our network is disturbing. It's crazy, yeah. But uh, since yesterday we've had issues of the network, and when we get in the studio, it gets more worse. So it's crazy. I don't know why. Shit is crazy. But yeah, I'm gonna mess. Gonna mess Ramsha. Okay. Hapo ebintu bibyo.
Biki nasoma buli kasasi.
Anyway, now China's involvement in Africa has been driven by various economic strategies and diplomatic objectives. We know that China, basically, someone will be like asking, why is China choosing Africa? Why is China choosing to involve itself in Africa rather than other continents? All right. First of all, China is involving itself in Africa because of the Africa's natural resources. Africa is rich in natural resources such as oil, minerals, and agricultural products. Chinese growing economy demands a stable supply of these resources to sustain its development. China's economy is still growing, and its economy is demanding these resources to, of course, sustain that development. So apparently, most of the Africans don't look at the fact that China needs Africa more than Africa needs China. We are looking at the fact that China is trying to improve Africa economically and forgetting that Africa is playing a very huge role in Chinese economic, in sustaining Chinese economic development. So apparently, we know that China is one of the countries that and Korea have always had a bond, that transaction relationship, that business relationship. So China, being one of the countries that, of course, involves in trade with other countries and trading most of the materials that it's running out of. China is running out of minerals like gold, and now it is targeting Africa to be one of its place where it can be getting these minerals to keep its market booming and, of course, to sustain its development. China involves in Africa because Africa has access. Africa is a market. Africa represents a significant. What? Why are you doing this?
It's okay.
I don't want it. Kati nkutte essimu alaba ndaba nti nkutte essimu gyosembeza kamera kiragala kuba nkitadde wansi kati so wasoma wano ngenda giwanika waggulu anti olaba market access. Africa represents a significant market. Bakiraba. Why are you doing that? What do I press it? Okay. Something. All right, like I said, that Africa represents a significant market for China's goods and services by investing in infrastructure projects and economic development. China aims to enhance its access to Africa's market. You have. I'm going to give you an example of the situation in Uganda. I'm going to give you the example of the situation in Uganda. Recently, Uganda blocked the importation of used clothes
and
cars, used cars, more especially clothes, second hand. Those are used things from the UK because most of it used these things were coming from the UK. Now, when Uganda stopped this, China came into the picture. And I believe that before Uganda cancelled this, there was an agreement, a memorandum of understanding that was signed between the Ugandan government and the Chinese towards the clothes manufactured
Mhm.
towards the clothes manufacturing. That now that Uganda blocked the Chinese, sorry, the importation of used clothes from UK, China comes in that picture, and now it says it's going to manufacture its clothes. It's going to construct infrastructure, that's industries, factories that are manufacturing clothes, and also, of course, import clothes from China to Uganda. But my biggest question was like, how what would be the price of these clothes? Because first of all, clothes that are made from China do not last for a long time, and so people get UK used clothes, and someone knows I'm get this clothes. Most of the things are durable. Also get it. So China involving itself in things and blocking UK from importing their used clothes to Uganda, it has created a market for its products, for that clothes. And when you go to Kenya, there are very many Chinese factories, Chinese industries that make shoes, make clothes, and we see many people go over there to, of course, just buy these stuffs. And like I tell you, Chinese things are never durable. You cannot trust a Chinese commodity here in Africa. But of course, as when it comes to the infrastructure, also the situation is very appalling because first of all, as China tells Africa that we are giving you debt, we are giving you a loan. Let me call it a loan. Those are shark loans, huge loans. China doesn't give you tangible loan that it is counting because it does not have that money really. China doesn't have the money to issue to Africans. China has labor, one, and China has a technical know-how of doing things. So China says that Uganda, if I'm constructing this road, I'm calculating that this road is going to cost this amount. Or if Uganda, do you want a loan here for how much this amount? What do you want to use it for? I want to construct a road. So China says, all right, you're going to give me that amount of money. I'm going to construct a road for you. What does China do? China invests in the materials, of course, the materials that are not even durable, gets the materials, gets labor, gets their prisoners from China, their gonorrhea and whatever. They're brought down here and they construct those roads. Yeah. Most of these people are doing, they are servicing. Most of these people they bring here are criminals. That's why they don't come without spouses. Tebajja na bakyala bava mu kkomera. There are people who have been sentenced, but they have a speciality. So of course, when you are sentenced in prison and you're brought to Africa to construct the things, you are not paid. That's why balaba bachafu baba banaku. They are not paid. You are doing service, free service to the government of China as part of paying for your what? For your sentence. So most of these people that come here to construct these roads, they are not. They are even at the end of the day they are not getting paid. They are not getting salary. So you can see how China is benefiting. It is not. It is not actually spending. It is not spending on paying the engineers, paying the workers, and everything. These people who are got and brought here are people who are picked from prison and they have the specialities. Some of them are engineers who committed the crimes. So, as part of them serving their sentences, they are brought down here to, of course, serve their sentence and do what we would call communal work, but for them it is whatever, I don't know how they will call that though. But like some people do communal work, when you're taken to prison and they're like, you can do communal work, you can do some charity, yes. So these people do this and they're brought down here too. So at the end of the day, China does not pay the people, the Chinese who work here. So that means every service they are giving out, I'll call it a free service. So after we do all those things, in return, Africa is supposed to pay. Africa is supposed to pay. Now, this is the way, first of all, Africa is supposed to pay for something that Africa was capable of doing, because Africa has professionals. We know we have engineers who can construct roads. All right, if Uganda doesn't have, I believe there are other African countries that have engineers who can do this. If Kenya doesn't have, I believe there are other African countries who have engineers who can do this. But China touches you in a way that you are not going to invest at the beginning. It tells you it is okay. I'm taking the money slowly, but I'm delivering. One, it delivers. By the time you finish the loan, the infrastructures are down. By the time you finish paying back, the roads have potholes. But so this is how China does this shit. And for me, it's very unfortunate, because I don't know why the African people do not trust each other. I don't know why. So as China is creating these roads, it's benefiting because it knows it is very important for the infrastructure of Africa to be good, for it to run whatever it is running smoothly. It is actually not doing this, and that's why the roads that China create have an extent. They have a duration period. So they know that we are going to evolve in Africa for this kind of years. By the time we are leaving, everything we have created, this is how those people are. That's why I say there is no Muzungu in Africa for Africa's benefit. So they know if we have created these roads and we want to evolve in Africa for something like 10 years, whatever they are doing for you is only going to last for 10 years. By the time they are leaving, everything will go with them. So China doesn't have the money to give to Africa because, first of all, it is poor. Secondly, most of it has a very high unemployment rate. So a country that has a very high unemployment rate, whatever strategy that China is laying towards Africa, it is for its benefit. It is a strategy that is going to benefit its people. It is a strategy that is going to develop China. It is a strategy that is creating market for Chinese commodities. That's why we are having a lot of Chinese market involvement all over Africa. The clothes, the fake phones, the whatever, everything. Most of the cheap things that Africans are having, of course, are from China. Then the infrastructural development. China's built the infrastructural development, like we know the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative that they call the BRI, seeks to improve infrastructure connectively globally. We know that in Africa, this involves building roads, ports, railways, and other critical infrastructure, fostering economic development and facilitating trade. Like I said, that whatever they are doing it for their own good. Recently, Chinese went ahead and built the railway line in Kenya that was running straight up and to passing through a certain park. And people celebrated, but basically the people that were employed on this railway road, this train, this railway transport system that was built by the Chinese in Kenya, most of the people who were employed on this railway were Chinese, because first of all, China is trying to find employment for its unemployed people. Two, this railway was passing through a game park. And trust me, it was later identified that the Chinese were actually poaching elephants and taking their ivory, the ivory from these elephants, a whole truck. They found like 7 tons of ivory. So apparently, there is a reason why they chose this specific route. Usually, these people have reasons why they do things, and it's so unfortunate that most of Africans look at this and we think they are helping. We think they want to see us grow. The reason is they want to have a smooth running of whatever business they have, because they're investing in little and harvesting in big. Now, later, everyone was asking, like, why did China choose to have this railway road planted or built along the park? They didn't know that China wanted to kill the elephants for their ivory, only to get these people having tons and tons of ivory that they were stealing from the game park where they had constructed the railway line. So you can see that there is a lot that actually is going on that is beyond Africa's, need. To the diplomacy and influence, by engaging with Africa's nations, China seeks relationships and gain influence on the global stage. This can be advantageous in international forums and political. Most of the African leaders have so very much had that collaboration and that friendship with China. And China is doing this, of course, to have to seek and build diplomatic relationship and gain influence on the global stage. That's why the moment China involved a lot with Africa, you saw that the US was shaken, it shook, and it started to it started to existence in Africa. And we know one thing for sure: China's connection with Russia is also a threat to these other countries that have had their print in Africa for some good time. Say something, I'm keeping quiet. Say something. Say something, Mister. Say something. Say something. All right. You get up. You
One point, about
uh, um, you know, China's involvement with Russia is on a higher level, that it threatens these other countries that ought to have their print in Africa for a very, very long time. You saw how people struggled the moment they saw that Africa was embracing Russia, and they were so scared of losing Africa that to try to see them trying to engage diplomatically and sending their representatives all over Africa. And right now, China is still holding things slowly, but I think China, China is targeting a larger thing than what majority of the. First of all, China has imprinted itself. It is funny when China gives the loans. When China issues the loan constructed roads, you realize that it always leaves that big billboard. I don't know whether it's only in Uganda, a billboard that says constructed by China, that everyone sees China's print. And you cannot move today from one district in Uganda to another without finding that post that says constructed by China. Before China
by the
coming,
government.
by the government of China. Before China came into the picture, we had our engineers here doing that shit, doing good things, you know. Um, so people, when people keep on reading that, at the back of their mind, there is China, there is big and wide China's involvement. Are actually involving with African development, economic or involvement. They have entangled a lot, but they have not. Apart from the poster, you will see that USA is supporting education, staff, girl, child. Most of these things, basically, they have been concentrating a lot on human rights. You see, the USA are usually supporting girl child education, fighting child labor and stuff like that. So all these kind of things are not very tangible to the people, because as if this thing has not directly affected you, you will not feel its impact. But the road that people are using every day, who is not going to feel that impact? So apparently China came with a new technique. If you wake up on the street and you hold a and everyone, you interview the street people, you'll ask them, have you ever seen the US involving development as Ugandans? I bet people will say we have never seen, but we know we have an American embassy. But you will ask people, have you seen China involving the other road over the other side? That road was built by China. People, because China has left that physical, direct involvement that people in the rural areas have felt Chinese impact, of course, with their babies running everywhere. That impact is unforgettable. So China has involved a lot with this, and compared to other countries. So we know that China has also had the debt for resource swaps. China often provides loans to African countries for infrastructure projects. In some cases, these loans are tied to the repayment through the export of natural resources, creating a form of debt for resource arrangement. This is what I was saying. For a very long time, China has been the largest export of gold to of course Russia and Korea. Korea has a very big connection with China when it comes to resource or gold, business or trade. And when China issues these loans, the infrastructural loans, it issues them on a basis of one, it chooses the collateral. You don't come and say, now, China, since you're going to construct this road, I want to give you the other pitch as collateral that in case I fail to pay, as they're giving loans, there is always collateral. That is the business of loaning. So they'll be like, I'll give you the other pitch. You can take the national stadium, in case I fail. China chooses their collateral. They decide, and before even you sign the agreement, China decides, like, if you fail, I'm taking that leg. I don't know whether they are taking these legs for free, but I know they lease the legs out for a duration of time. Like, I'm taking apparently 20 years. So for 20 years, I'm going to use this leg the way I want. For 20 years, if you fail to repay back the loan. So secondly, you are going to give me, I'm going to start exporting your gold. Duration, I'm going to export or a certain amount of gold averagely for this duration if I construct for you. And remember, this they are not in hard cash. I don't understand why Africans would take such kind of loans, yet it has people who have the speciality. Because we have engineers. We have engineers who can construct these roads all over Africa. Why don't you do business within? Why do you want China to involve? Yet China is not giving you. We may say, all right, Kenya doesn't have the hard cash, but China is not giving you the hard cash. It's only giving you the labor. The labor you are even supposed to give your people. Okay, because me getting one big engineer or a contractor from China and asking that person to employ only Ugandans to work under that person, that means I've created jobs for my people. But when China come, even to the person who is sweeping the road is going to be a Chinese. Even the person who is going to give them water when they are working is Chinese. The only people I see, those are the people who raise those white and whatever flags, who are black, and they're usually women who are always raising the flags. I don't know what are those flags for.
Stopping, and
they're
my red and
white.
green.
At times I see them white.
It's red and green, either to stop or go.
White.
They're normally red and black, red and green, to either stop cars or let them go when those trucks are crossing.
I usually see the women in our side attend as a way to chukuro wakan. So nga bambadde ne boots. I cannot forget their appearance. For whatever reason, they raise those flags. It may be maybe red and green or banana.
It is red and green.
Yinza okuba nga ninamu kala blind.
Kati gundi representing.
Bali abantu bakola bukozi byabwe. Wako otwala kyalodi byabwe. Naye nga I always see those women doing that stuff all the time. Why should people involve in this kind of loan, yet we have people who can do it? They also want to contribute to Africa because of the global geopolitics. We know that establishing a presence in Africa allows China to counterbalance other global powers and enhance its geopolitical standing. We know that there is a time when China built the African Union headquarters and bagged that headquarters with and bagged it for it to be able to spy on whatever discussions the African countries would be having in their conferences and their summits. It was important for China to know the weakness of each African country and know how to go about it. Because if I told China was doing, if I told China, and people, Africans should be very careful with the involvement of China, more especially in the infrastructure. China has built so far like 4 parliaments in 4 different African countries. But I believe that these parliaments are bagged. Because they want to know where to touch. They want to know how to come about. And China, I foresee China wanting to colonize Africa. Just like these other countries have been doing. China doesn't want to be left out. And it's coming as a friend.
And they said it's not imperialism, it is not neo-colonialism, but partnership.
That's what they keep saying. But you cannot, first of all, China is poor. The truth remains that China is poor. You understand? So, and their population is growing rapidly. So, there is a bigger vision China has towards Africa for its benefit and its country's development that a lot of African leaders are not looking at. I'm always like, we have always had world superpower countries trying to outcompete each other. China is in conjunction with Russia, like it or not. The 2 guys are working together. And like we had the partition of Africa being partitioned for different, colonial masters, Russia and China are deciding to collaborate together to have their influence in Africa because they have never had that before. It is very important for these people. They are like trying to say, the US and UK and France, I think your time is up. We also have to have a touch on Africa's minerals. We also have to exploit these people to a certain level. I hope we are not sleeping. I hope we are very awake not to allow history to repeat itself. And I feel like this time around it may be worse than what history has ever done. Yes, sir.
They were there. You
never do. We know that, of course, China competitions with Western countries in Africa is manifested in, is multifaceted. Of course, it is involving
stories. Adda ekyo kiraga nti nno either otudde ku mukeeka oba kabalaza. ate wano walungi tolina ngeri gye weesigama n'obungiko
We know that Chinese is competing with the West world for the influence in Africa. And we know that, of course, China has had its economical investment. Now, China has become a major player in Africa's economies by providing substantial infrastructure investments, loans, and aid. These economic engagements often focus on sectors like energy, telecommunication, and transportation, contributing to the economic, challenge over these other countries. Like I said, most of the most of these countries that have had their existence in Africa have not, had that huge economical impact. But China has reached to the depth of apparently everybody. And I think this is a strategy they are laying, that if at all you are complaining, it is very hard for anyone to complain unless that somebody is a very critical thinker to identify the impact, the negative impact China is causing. Because, me, if it was, you remember the situation, the of Idi Amin, because of course we were not existing at that time, but the historical situation of Idi Amin, where he complained about a particular thing that we are seeing repeating itself in Uganda and Africa-wise. The first thing that Amin said, the reason why he deported most of the Bazungus back to where they come from is that they were not citizens. They did not want to be citizens of Uganda, but they rather wanted to be in Uganda and take everything they are working back to their home, which he felt like this was a challenge. Why should you be working your country? That means you are the two from Africa and taking back to your home area, which of course Amin found so challenging and disagreed with. He said, for the Indians, if you want to be here, you're going to be a citizen here, and everything you are going to work in Uganda is going to be in Uganda. And Indians did not agree with the terms and the conditions.
Not only Indians, even the British.
And the British did not agree with the minister and condition. He said, whatever, it is okay if you want to work. It is okay if you want to stay in Uganda. It is okay if you want to work over here. People don't usually talk about these things that guy did, but this was beneficial. He said it is okay for you to do whatever it is that you want to do, but you should know that Ugandan. Be a Ugandan. Let whatever you do be for Uganda.
Yeah.
We don't want you to sit doing shit and later you are sending the money back into your country. So he had agreed with this. So when these people refused, he said, I'm sending you back. You should go back. Because you don't want to be Ugandans, you want to be in Uganda. You don't want to invest in Uganda, you want to be in Uganda. So why do you want to harvest from here? Who is harvesting from your country? So that's the major reason why that guy deported people back. So we are seeing this repeating itself, that we are having a lot of Chinese here who are harvesting. They are harvesting a lot from Uganda. They are harvesting a lot from Africa rather than investing, and they are taking back to their home. To that point, if at all China decides to say that we are constructing a cloth manufacturing company or factory, or we are trying to construct these industries, we expect to see the Chinese constructing these industries, yes, on the soil, on Africa's soil, but employing the African people. But China is not employing the African people. Apart from in these hard labor things like, of course, digging soil, the risky jobs are the ones they are giving to the Africans. You are going down where there are landslides to fetch soils in mining areas, and you are in the risky positions in those mining areas Why don't they bring Chinese? They are afraid of losing even one Chinese. But we are seeing a lot of Africans. But the professional jobs where we should see a lot of Africans involving, that we are not. Apart from, of course, I'm seeing a company like Sinok, this oil company, and I think the reason why Sinok is so much involving Africans on the ground is because of course, we have China in the oil companies of Uganda. The reason why we see it involving special Ugandan specialties is because the for the groundwork, it is very important for because where this oil has been discovered is in the rural areas. You understand? So they need those people who are going to communicate to the local people time and again, all the time. That communication is very necessary. And I think that's why they are having the involvement of the Black people within the oil sector.
Okay.
Yogera nga mukwano nga toli mulope n'oyogera kumala essaawa ssatu ne weetapula n'odde.
Ekitegeezo ekyayogera.
Ate kyova olaba olumu nnyinza okwogera ne nkwerabira.
Ekitegeezo
Batandika
ekyayogera.
okuŋŋamba mbu nkuwe mayigi ate baba bamanyi nti ndi mu kufuba. Kale kinnuma sikulimba.
Gwe mukama wange. Yogera gwe mukama wange. Yogera. Ati keweddeyo.
Tuwedde.
Okay. Africa has received has received very many funds through the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, which aims to create actually a new geopolitical order that will establish China's dominance in Asia and Eurasia. So, decided by the United States, the BRI I've talked about has been a essential tool of Chinese diplomacy since its launch in 2013. So the debt trapping issue, we see that China, it focuses so much on debt trapping in African countries, you know. So the debt trapping issue, a claim that China is luring countries into unsustainable loans to build unnecessary infrastructure. To expand unnecessary to expand its strategic and military reach has been repeated in the media, particularly after the Sri Lanka's port situation. However, in addition to that, additionally, contrary to the argument of Chinese debt trapping, the BRI, an economic project with financing mechanism, has been recipient driven since the inception, with countries selecting the projects or what will be built under the umbrella.
Yeah.
So China has appetite to large infrastructure projects because of its history and the fact that other sectors would not provide Chinese companies with identical multiples they find in their own country. Since China built BRI projects reflect the needs and the goals of local governments. The problem is some of these projects have presented results from local governance challenges, may be adverse economic, environmental, and political implications. Such situations have forced Beijing to alter course and change policies occasionally. However, because of the high levels of indebtedness and financial vulnerabilities in some countries, debt trapping in Africa has been an occasional leveled at China investments. So this allegation is based on China's significant role in providing loans for infrastructure projects under favorable terms. Okitegeera?
Mm.
The project, the loans you talked about,
Mm.
these are infrastructure loans.
Mm.
Okitegeera?
Mm.
Leading to debts countries may be unable to repay.
Mm.
Additionally, so Western critics have criticized the lack of transparency of China's loans to Africa, which limited accountability and public trust.
Mm.
Three situations are generally referred to when referring to the debt trapping allegation. Again,
Mm. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Of course,
in case,
that allegation. Of course, a lot of countries came in, the US, the
mm,
France, all
mm,
these countries that have
mm,
had their involvement.
mm,
They felt like China wants to trap Africa in these states.
so, in the case of the Djibouti, where China has built its first overseas military base and has invested significantly in ports and infrastructure,
Mm.
the debt levels have increased,
Mm.
okitegeera,
Mm.
leading to concerns that eventually China could enhance its influence in the country
Mm.
and affect its sovereignty.
Mm.
Okitegeera. In Kenya, China's ever increasing infrastructure investments, notably the standard gauge railway you talked about,
Mm.
have criticism because of the high costs of corruption charges and may lead to the countries to default. Another one, Zambia has received the China investments for major infrastructure projects, energy and transportation because of falling prices in the copper industry,
Mm.
one of the Zambia's most important sectors.
Mm.
We see that the possibility of default could lead to Chinese takeover of the country's strategic assets.
Mm.
Despite of the Western allegations of the debt trapping, China should not be blamed for the challenges faced by the countries, where economic management is associated with the current unstable geopolitical conditions in the aftermath of COVID-19. Kitegeera?
Jambo tumewekwa.
Sijja gyetema.
Alitamuka basi, atamanya kwa basi.
Hmm? Ejjaka. So, so Chinese loans have provided African countries with the necessary funding to build infrastructure and foster economic growth. However, this is just for debt trapping.
Yeah.
Okitegeera?
Bazuka
Eh,
basi. Atakasitokuwako awepa.
kati wulira.
Mpulira.
Mainly through, I said that Chinese loans have provided African countries with the necessary funding to build infrastructure and foster economic growth, mainly through trade, filling up financial gap Western countries have not been willing to deal with. So Chinese loans have been used primarily. Hmm. So,
Being
so,
low
so,
interest rates.
so these Chinese uh, tuli wano
Mm.
bayogerako awo.
Mhm. Oh yeah, this.
Whether ali Facebook.
Greater power competition. So, want to so greater power. We know that China has, like I said, that China is involving in Africa to, of course, compete with other countries that they have to compete for power. A classic aspect of international relations is based on the traditional power politics, particularly a permanent contest for supremacy, regional or global, competition. Now, the issue of greater power competition is particularly relevant in the context of Chinese rise. Now, the decline of the United States and Russia's resurgence, three distinctive elements, power, security, and the status, are the most significant stakes competition. Now, other factors such as neighborhood and sub-region may affect guests of the quest for the greater power status. In Africa, rivalry and competition for influence and resources between the European Union, the United States, Russia, and China are occurring. Now, throughout has attracted significant international interest because of its natural resources and economical potential. We know that everyone wants to have a touch of Africa because of its natural resources. Apparently, everyone would love to harvest from Africa's natural resources. So we see everybody coming in a friendship zone. We see everybody coming in a relationship, friendship zone. Um, Zone that we want, creating that economical bond and relationship, but they usually come for the resources and of course economical potential, because Africa has the biggest market. We are big consumers of different products all over the world, so that different countries engage themselves with Africa in order to sustain their economy and also have a touch of Africa's, um, Africa's resources. Additionally, we know that the strategic location of Africa is of particular interest since it is the continent best positioned geographically in relation to consumption centers of the world. Just like I said, that Africa is one of the largest consumers, and the strategical location of Africa, the positioning of Africa gives it a center, of the world, and Africa has from the other continent a positive demographic bonus with growing consumer power. Recently, some time back when I spoke about why like everybody wants to have that involvement. First of all, there is the population development, the population growth of Africa, because you cannot talk about consumption and not talk about population, because it is the population that consumes. So strategically, we foresee Africa's populational growth hitting in 2050, we see Africa being the top of the highest populated continent in the world. Because if you see averagely, first of all, Africa has the biggest population of youths. We have a very large population of youth, and the birth rates are becoming higher and higher. And for the fact that these people are young, that means there is still room for populational growth and shortest durable time. So a lot of people usually know that when you're dealing in business, first of all, the consumption is very important. You cannot create a business without identifying the availability of market, that available market for where your commodities or whatever you are producing is going to of course be consumed. So people focus on Africa because they know that at a certain given time in the future, Africa is going to be the number one consumer of different products and services all over the world. So China foresees this, and that's why it basically tries to imprint itself that Africa has the bonus growing consumer power. So there is a guarantee that if there is that huge relationship, your consumption level is guaranteed because of the consumer power that Africa holds against other continents in the world. Now, Africa has a greater power competition, and African countries have become
negativity.
Of course, military cooperation has been an area of particular interest, with the United States having the most significant military presence in Africa. United States has had the most insignificant military presence in Africa, and China has been involved in peacekeeping missions in Africa and recently established its first overseas military base in Djibouti. Russia, which has had an active presence since the Soviet Union period, also has significant cooperation agreements with many African countries. Of course, we've seen the Russian mercenaries involving in Africa's, of course, uh, churn and hold on a little.
Baby Savior, baby Savior. Your friend, Roa.
What is in Shamba Danger Garden? I'm not seeing it. So anyway, what there's something I was trying to look up. Um, we have, of course, Russia has also been involving in, of course, Africa's military, just as China and other countries. Now, with Africans' abundance in natural resources, oil, gas, minerals, and agricultural commodities, as access to such goods has been driver for competition between the great powers. All players, Russia, China, the European Union, and the US, have sought cooperation agreements to secure access to resources and diverse energy sources. Basically, we are going to on this. Yes, I know that every nation wants that touch of Africa because, like I always say, that no one touches Africa and remains the same. And greatness that Africa holds, except Africans don't know the greatness they hold, of course. We have love me very well, oh, touch me very well, oh. Like I was saying, that the involvement with these countries in the African, I wanted to give you an example of the agricultural involvement. There is too much. When we talk about business, everyone has their own idea about business. But I'm telling you that whatever is being brought in the business world, Africa is focused on, is concentrated on and focused on as, of course, the number one that as a country, a continent that has the number one consumers power of late, and still the predictions are so predicting that Africa may take lead by 2050, a tremendous lead, by the way, looking at statistics. Now, when we look at the agricultural sector, we have seen how the pharmaceutical companies outside Africa want to involve in the African agricultural sectors. Whenever these people introduce ideas, like I said, they are always introducing markets. They're introducing ideas that are going to make it possible for their goods to be consumed, for whatever they are producing to be consumed. We have seen how largely the GMOs have spread all over the continent, and with a beneficial impact that, of course, that people don't always foresee negativity that comes along with this. Recently, we are talking with INNOSSETU, and we told you guys that as the GM, as people are cultivating GMOs, the governments are always making them understand that there is available market for whatever they are doing. But before you foresee the available market one, let's look at the investment these people have put in. Of course, they invest buying the pesticide and everything from the pharmaceutical companies that are also selling these seeds. The seeds they bring, the GMO seeds that are brought to Africa, cannot be reused like the ancestral methods of farming. That when you cultivated or carried or planted something, you would pick some seeds to replant again for the next season. So what does this imply? That these GMO seeds, once they are planted, you still have to buy new ones to keep on planting. So the process, the transaction keeps on flowing. Their markets keeps on flowing at every season, on every time, because you're supposed to rebuy time and again. And then, so these are the kind of markets. So Africans, first of all, we look at what they call, when they look at, there is a way Africans term the GMO products. These are climatic resistant plants that they keep on saying that they're pest resistant, they're climatic resistant, that no matter the climate, they're going to maneuver through. So people are focusing at the fact that these things are assumed to be climatic resistant, but they are forgetting the bigger impact, of course, which of course is negative, that they are imposing on Africa's soil, on Africa's genes after consumption, and Africa's immune system after consumption. So the major important things we are not looking at. So these are the wars that actually these people are waging against the African people, because for their own benefits, and we are so blind about this. So we also know that diplomatic engagement with Africa has grown. Both China and the United States have launched initiatives to enhance diplomatic cooperation with African countries. Now, China has established and developed the relevance of its forum, China-Africa Cooperation, the forum which is called FOCAC. You can say for ACSC, and the United States has its own frameworks like Prosper Africa, which promotes economic growth and improved governance. Now, these two are always hitting heads. China, America doesn't like to hear about China's involvement in Africa, because like you see, when China introduced the Africa Cooperation, the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, the United States also had created the framework that, of course, it named Prosper Africa, which was basically concentrating on the promotion of economical growth and improved governance in Africa. Before that, we had issues like US aid. Basically, America's involvement with Africa was based on human rights. It did not based on and other stuff. Though a lot on harvesting minerals from Africa, it had not retaliated to see Africa grow economically. By the way, that's why we don't see a lot of infrastructures being created or built or constructed by the United States of America, but rather we see some school blocks because they have so much been on the human rights level, and this is something that is not tangible. You find like in a school, they have constructed a building, there's a small hospital that is involving. So these are the rights to have health services. They will go ahead and construct little boreholes and small wells and stuff like that, because most of their involvement has not been so economical, but rather basing on their human rights. Now, after China bringing the FOCAC, America says, what the, bro, what are you trying to do? America comes in and brings the Prosper Africa, which promotes economic growth and improved governance. But of course, we know that America is so much hard and strong in the dictation. It dictates, apparently. It wants to show its power anytime. And China is like a cat. Unless it removes the crawl, people are still feeling like it's a little bit soft. I would say that the US is very forward. It's very straight and forward. It is very straight and forward in what it is doing. If it's about governance, it wants to involve in your leadership throughout, in and out. And even if China is involving in Africa's politics, it is just doing the groundwork. It is underneath. It is very hard for people to see, but we also know that China is not here for, of course, a good cause. China adopts a no strings attached approach in Africa. China adopts a no strings attached approach in Africa with a particular focus on economic development and infrastructure. While the Western countries seek to emphasize governance and human rights, okay, so so like okay, so like I was telling you guys that China adopts a no string attached approach. Like I said, that's why like most of the African political leaders are finding it more safer to collaborate with China, because China shows that whether you want to be a dictator, whatever you want to do, it doesn't cost. If you want to kill people in genocide, if you want to slaughter your citizens, I don't care. Just give me this route because I want to construct a road here and I'm taking shit. So whatever. So, but the Western countries seek to emphasize governance and human rights. This is what I say. Now, this is a problem they have. This is a problem that the African governments are feeling the heat of these other Western countries. You're coming in to dictate a law, introduce LGBTQ. China says, okay, Uganda, if you don't want homosexuality, fine. Me, I'm okay, bro. Do whatever you want. I'm fine. As long as we are doing business. The US says, if you don't allow homosexuality in Uganda, we are withdrawing our aid from you, Uganda. So if you're not, so these are the things. These are the things that China is beating. China has a no strings attached approach that for it comes to do its business. It does not involve in your politics, whether you want to be a dictator, whether you want to do whatever, as long as it is getting what it wants. And these other people want to get what they want and also sit on your ass and also squeeze your neck and also decide how you're going to sleep. Don't sleep when you're facing that side, I say. Don't eat that one, I say. So the African leaders, I think this is the compatibility and China knows. And after bugging the European Union headquarters, it knows it hurts Africans to be suppressed the way the Western world is suppressing them. So China says, I'm coming with another technique. How about I let you guys do whatever you want, but I'm coming at the end of the day. So, of course, the Western countries seek to emphasize governance and human rights. The Chinese strategy has allowed the African countries to implement projects faster to address current issues and challenges. Now, African countries can leverage this great power dynamic based on their domestic interest and long-term strategies to attract investment, technology transfer, and more rapid economical development. Now, the effective determination of the national interest with an effective strategy should be the main driving force for pursuing a thriving situation. But Africans have been so lousy, about understanding. Because there is one thing I know, that if these people can use us for their benefit, we can also use them. But we are not using them. Me, this is one thing I know. Because at the end of the day, abantu bali interdependent. So, people waliwo akantu k'obuuzi wali yadde sikategeddako katukuba bukubi. Okay, kaleka katukuba. So, if people can use us for their benefits, why is it hard for Africans to use others for Africa's benefit? Why are we very much allowing this to enter us so deeply with an open arm that we do not revise whatever mission? Because first of all, it would be our Amin benefited from the Bazungu a lot. This dude, whenever they would bring things like, okay, do you want to construct roads? You have to go to he makes sure that those roads are good. That's why even in some areas we still have those roads and they are still strong. You see, but now you are giving, because if you involve other Africans to be other engineers, it was always a partnership during the days of if probably you give a Chinese a contract, allow this Chinese to work with another contractor in the country. Because now these people's heads will be hitting. They will get to know what you're doing is not right. What you're trying, the materials you're doing are weak. The materials are involving. So, but you just give the Chinese staff wholeheartedly without any investigation, without trying to bring some other African engineers to do the testing or to make sure that whatever they are doing is right. And this is why we are seeing a lot of things, a lot of the infrastructures that Chinese have built not lasting for a very long time. But
and that is the unnecessary infrastructure. Keep on constructing unnecessary infrastructure in the name of developing in African countries. Yogera. Let us speak it. So we know that China and the EU are both active in Africa with different motivations and approaches. However, European, now I'm going to relate or to compare the relation between EU and China. We see that, however, European ties are much older than Chinese. We know that Africa's historical relationship with the European countries derives from past of exploitation of the continent and divisions that have been difficult for Africa to overcome. So the European colonial history in Africa has led to requests of reparations, realizing from slavery and exploitation of the continent. Over the last decades, we see that the relationship between the EU and Africa has focused more on development aid and cooperation in governance, sustainable development, trade, and development through various economic partnership agreements. So China's engagement in Africa does not share the negative legacy and background of the European countries. China's, China is new in this. So So
But I think they're also going to colonize us. The legacy is coming.
Yeah.
The exploitation is already on ground.
China's engagement, like I said, has been driven primarily by infrastructure investment and resource extraction, right? So, however, it should be emphasized that China considers infrastructure. So, however, should be emphasized that China considers infrastructure investment as a essential source of more secure economic growth. Okitegeera? Based on the Chinese proverb which states, if you want to get rich, build roads first. So this reaffirms the Chinese perspective that infrastructure development is essential for growth and building positive legacy from Chinese presence in Africa. So Chinese presence has challenged the EU traditional influence in Africa by offering alternative to conventional Western patterns for the past interests of Africa. So the EU and China, however, should engage in developmental projects, but China mainly want that imperialistic kind of investments in Africa. Ntiyo China, like it has brought a new approach to all this to Africa. Yet with the investments to make people forget that it doesn't want to do what? To extract minerals, to do mining, but we know what China is doing in African countries. They are doing jobs that local people would have done. They are doing things, they're having factories, they're doing gardening here. They have farms. Okitegeera? I'll show you when we're going to that place how Chinese have destroyed. Now tugenda agenda n'essimu tujja kulaba bona aliko. So that is China and EU.
How can you talk to me like that? Do you enjoy doing that?
It is impossible to take pictures when
That's right.
shutter speaks. So that is the relation. That is the comparison between China and these former colonial masters, all the partners Africa has been dealing with over years. Then we have China and the United States in Africa. So both China and the US have been actively engaged in Africa, right? The US has focused primarily on private sector investment and market accesses for US companies. Additionally, the United States has launched initiatives like the African Growth and Opportunity Act to provide duty-free access to the American market for some African products. So to counter the BRI I talked about at the first beginning of this.
The BRI.
Yeah. The US has also been increasing efforts to enhance diplomatic presence and increase the US Africa trade and investment ties. It has also implemented initiatives like the the Young African Leaders Initiative, right? To build relationship with African leaders and slow down the influence of Confucius institutes. The purpose of which to promote Chinese language and culture. Additionally, the US has been concerned with the possible enlargement of Chinese military presence in the continent. The US is present in Africa through its African Command and vital factor capacity building and fighting against terrorism. In the technological arena whereby China stroke US strategic clash has been deepening, particularly in cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and 5G technology. African countries must distance themselves from this diverse push for technological dominance in order to be choose the best of themselves. We talked about China building the headquarters for the UN.
Mm. Yeah.
After building
For
that,
African Union, AU.
yeah, for AU, sorry, not UN. After building headquarters for AU,
Mm.
these people are batekamu spying goons.
That's
Yeah, they
yeah.
spied AU for some years, for some good years before the realization of this. It is the Chinese that built this, and actually they also wanted to build the headquarter building for Comesa recently. Nalaba bakola petition nti they want to build.
But zero.
Kitegeera. Jibjaba. Hey family.
You turn early today. We have been coming early for the whole week. My sleep cycle is screwed up today. Mhm.
Jiba.
You have been coming early. Whenever you used to see us, that was a second phase, but the first phase has always been this early, and I think today we are a little bit late, but like at this time we would be finishing. So good. It is.
It's a night, good morning.
It's still good morning.
Mm.
Mm.
So African countries to face several challenges addressing these essential to secure development, growth and progress despite the positive economic growth in the last decade. Unemployment, inequality, and still challenges Africa faces, particularly in securing inclusive development. Many African countries still face government and stability issues, with the weak institution and corruption leading to political and economic instability. A fragile environment for transparency and the rule of law is a challenge in African nations still need to overcome to achieve greater stability. Additionally, the continent still faces challenges related to inadequate infrastructure, transportation, energy, and telecommunication, which limits economic growth and development. Developing robust infrastructure and crucial for trade and development, particularly in the continent. Yeah, inadequate rule of law and
Give it a one
transparency.
second.
Teri kiri eno bino bikuba bagiba.
I'm usually sleeping. The Chinese beauty junk. True. True. Oh, you're usually sleeping. Yeah. Well, yeah, I know. At times I do it because
Hey, too long.
of time. We are supposed to make sure that um
So currently, I see now African schools they're now introducing Chinese language,
yeah,
and if you get good grades in this language, you get a free visa
to China.
to China.
Mm.
They take you to China. You see different places in China, historical places like that wall. Sorry, in China, that wall that is believed to be having 3,000 years old.
Mm.
They take you to China, you do touring in China. If at all you have good grades in Chinese language,
Yeah.
so I'm seeing very many Africans, but maybe
Comment
African
ya did that.
Jaba. If people would leave you alone, there would be no problems. Yeah, wishful thinking.
True. You know, you cannot talk about China and not talk about Russia. That's why Russia and China, they are working together.
You can't pay me to go to China. You couldn't pay me to go to China.
I know China and Russia have developed a strategic partnership that is often characterized as comprehensive strategic partnership of conditions. And the relationship between China and Russia has strengthened in various areas. And of course, most of their interest is now focusing on Africa. Just like we had the German, France, and all of those countries sitting together in the Berlin conference to discuss on how to control Africa, Russia is working together with China. And the funniest thing I'm seeing, like, they have geopolitical alignment. Both China and Russia share certain geopolitical interests, particularly in countering what they perceive as the influence of the United States as its allies.
Is Uganda part of the Belt and Road? Huh? About challenges and
well, as well, around January 20, Uganda is not directly part of the Belt and Road Initiative led by China. Uganda is not directly. The Belt and Road Initiative is a vast infrastructure and economic development project that primarily focuses on connectivity and cooperation between Eurasian countries. However, China has engaged in various infrastructure projects in Uganda independently of the Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese investments in Uganda have included areas such as road construction, energy projects, and other forms of economic cooperation. It's essential, for us to first go in and try and find out. But as of now, Uganda has not directly involved with China when it comes to the brick, the road and stuff. Uganda isn't much into that. It's not directly into that. So, the president of Uganda withdraws from a lot. He doesn't want to have a lot of associations, a lot of too much debt involvement and stuff like that. Yeah, he doesn't like being shaken. But like I was telling you that China and Russia, they are working together to fight or outcompete their allies. That's the United States. Collaborating in international forums on issues such as multipolarity and opposition as Western harmony. Now, her hegemony. First of all, China and Russia are trying to outcompete the US. It's like they're trying to show the US that you are nothing. This is a competition that has, of course, is for Africa. They're trying to, of course, scramble once again. They're trying to fight for their position in Africa. And actually, that's why you see United States coming back to Africa, trying to call Africans and trying to awaken them that the debt you are getting from China is a trap. And to the point that we see some other, the US coming in and said, we are going to pay your debt. We don't want China to owe you nothing.
That's a debt trap. Look at the Mombasa port.
They own it if Kenya defaults. Yeah, true. They own it if Kenya defaults. True. This is what China does.
We even have some roads here in Uganda. We have some roads in Uganda. Even the road that is considered to be the most expensive invested road in the whole world. That this road is paid. We pay to use this road. Actually, I talked about this thing earlier. We pay to use this road, and money that's going to go in it doesn't benefit the Ugandans. It is for the Chinese to pay that. This necessary infrastructure we were talking about the China is going on building in Africa. The city was Africans. It is making Africans fools to think that like they are not looking at like it's bringing a kind of a development which is unnecessary for its gains.
Like I was telling you that the railway Jibijaba is telling us about. It passes through the game park. And these people are stealing ivory.
The standard gauge rail.
So like I say, there is economical ties between the relationship between China and Russia. Like I was trying to tell you, there is that economic ties between China and Russia that have grown significantly. Both countries engage in trade, investment, and energy cooperation. They have also collaborated on large-scale infrastructure projects. China takes most of its people to go and work in Russia. China gives Russia labor. There are a lot of Chinese in Russia working as, like the way you see Africans going to Bichan, to Arab countries. So there is that friendship. That's why Russia, rather, they are working together. They also have that military collaboration that China and Russia conduct joint military exercises and engage in defense cooperation. This includes arms sales, technology transfers, and joint military training, enhancing their military capabilities. So apparently, Russia and China want to be associates in all aspects. This is why I'm telling you, I'm seeing China and Russia wanting to control or to colonize Africa and me. Because these two people have been working together for a very good time. The two countries coordinate on various political issues, supporting each other's position in international forums. They often align on issues related to sovereignty, non-interference, and opposition to what they perceive as interference in the internal affairs. Like this, Russia, you remember there is a time where we had the campaigns in Uganda between Bobby Wine and the president of Uganda, where the US was provoking and intimidating. It even gave in a threat letter that made Bobby Wine move like a bird in the sky. He knew that now Uganda is done. The US came around and said that Museveni, this time around we are with the Bobby Wine. Oh my God, US can also play Jack. We are with the Bobby Wine, and if you cheat, if you rig those votes, we are sending our troops to Uganda. Russia said, hey, US, what are you saying? Russia said, stop backing. What are you saying? If you dare bring your troops to Uganda, we are turning all our missiles to face US. Why? Russia said, I'm with you, Russia, they are friends.
North Korea said, I'm with you.
China said, Russia, we are together. There is no way US is going to involve itself with Uganda's politics. Korea said the same. People started talking back to North Korea said the same thing. Iran said the same thing. We are not letting you attack Uganda. We are all standing up and stuff like that. So it's like apparently these people love challenging the US because they feel like US interrupts a lot with the leadership all over the world. So that is how I think US says this is not worth it. We cannot be doing this. They kept quiet about it. So sorry. Zalili nsomungo inawaka.
Atenina.
Aweddeyo.
Yaweddeyo. Naye tulina eddakiika 9 zisobola okutulemerera.
The most significant aspect of China-Africa cooperation has been the reduction in dependency of African countries on their former Western patterns and colonizers. And this has hit so hard. That's why we see them trying to have a comeback. They are trying to reframe. They are trying to change. They are trying to, of course, find a way of also existing in Africa's present, lives. And I've said the argument of debt trapping and neocolonialism is contending with regard of the capacity of African countries to determine their path and futures and to safeguard their long-term interests.
The Chinese.
Of course, the Chinese with their debt trapping and of course neocolonialism. Let's not skip the fact that it is happening. People are not focusing on the neocolonialism, but we know it is happening, and this is between China, Russia, and Africa once again. And even if China is trying to pretend like it is not involved, but of course it is. Finding the best way to benefit from great power competitions, particularly between China, European Union, Russia, and the United States, is Africa's most pressing challenge in the coming years. Africa's leadership should keep a strategic distance from the players to ensure its Africa's interests first. This means avoiding false narratives that may develop, particularly concerning China. There is that untransparency. There is that untransparency in the issuing of loans that even I'm yet to understand. Because if a loan is not cash, then what is it? There is that untransparency, just as we have never received any aid. I don't know why, like the United States of America claims that they are giving aid. Just even Russia pretends that, China pretends that they are giving aid. This aid, first of all, they are harvesting more than the aid they are giving us. So they are giving us a little of what we owe, what they owe us. Anyway. What will not be our transparency?
China. Hey, Jiba has something to say. Said to hack out the film Confession, an economic hit man. Maria knows it.
Confession of an economic hit man.
I
just did a
economic hit man.
He's going to watch it. Today I will make him watch it.
Okay, Jiba.
Well, not that in some cases China has been accused of engaging in resource for debt arrangements where loans are tied to natural resources. Consensus critics argue that this could lead to the exploitation of African resources with the long-term consequences. China, of course, wants to exploit the Africa's resources. We know that the interest rates and repayment are very huge. The terms of Chinese loans, including interest and rates and repayment schedules, have been points of contention. High interest rates or unfavorable repayment terms could strain the financial stability of borrowing nations. And these issues, of course, China leading practices in Africa, being adept and cruelty, while China has provided substantial loans and investment for infrastructure projects in Africa. This is very scaring and that we are concerned. And of course, the potential risk and consequences are very crucial for some reasons. And we know China is trying to trap Africa into this. And I don't know why China is coming with a debt dependencies strategic. Why it is bringing that fiscal flexibility of economic, and it limits our access to attaining, because the profits of what they are giving, because a loan cannot be important if it has not been used. If at all people are getting loan, they want to get loan for benefits, but the loans the Africans get from China, first of all, they are not durable. The roads that are created, we know the next time we are supposed to invest in the same roads again because they are not durable. Their interest and the terms of payments are so long. There is a high interest and favorable payment terms. So some Chinese funded projects in Africa have faced criticism for their environmental and social impacts. Critics argue that inadequate environmental and social safeguards in these projects may harm local communities. We have seen this throughout time. Chinese they don't care how Africa remains. We have seen them carrying out lumbering and the forests are down totally. We have seen them taking soils and people are starting to, and there are a lot of landslides in China. What's right? Maze. Rwamsha na maze. Maze.
They call it no outro.
All right. First of all, Jibijaba, thank you so much for being here. We are going to end this right now, but I know we shall be meeting you back in that time when you have woken up again. I know you may be sleeping since you are still awake at this time. Thank you so much for being with us throughout this journey and dropping in those good comments. Don't worry, the movie, I'll make sure that INNOSSETU watches that movie. Try to hear you. You go out of one year with the Confessions of an Economic Hitman. We shall watch that, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for all those who have supported and watched us on our live majority, and of course those who love Black Hot Fire Network and at Africa Maria with his colleague INNOSSETU, with her colleague INNOSSETU. Some people just come here to enjoy seeing me and INNOSSETU discuss, even if some people will be just looking at us with their headphones on their ears listening to music, but they're watching. Thank you so much for always doing that. That shows that you love us and you wish to see us come. Once again, thank you so much for loving Black Hot Fire Network. It has been Africa Maria from Kampala, Uganda. See you in the next episode. We are saying ciao ciao. Kwaheri. Bye bye.